Let's go for the actual slow. Europa Natural
Greetings, humanity, and welcome to Europa Natural Law, a roundtable transmission dedicated to healing the madness, badness, and sadness plaguing our beautiful, bountiful world. Through regaining our sanity, reclaiming our inborn sovereignty, and honoring our inherent responsibility, we can improve reality. I'm Nemo Jones, reporting for beauty from Devonshire, Albion, where I cook, write, speak, and sing for freedom, reason, and beauty. And my stuff is at nemojones.com. And going around the round table, let's introduce ourselves.
Derek Bartoluccelli, out here in France. So flippin' Italian that my whole studio smells like garlic.
I'm Oscar. I'm in Denmark, and that sounds delicious. I love that garlic. I grew up in Italy, so yes, aglio.
Hi, I'm Yvonne, and I'm from Norfolk. And out in the wild garlic's coming up. We're in season.
KRIS Nelson, my site is evolveconsciousness.org, and I live in Canada.
Cool, well, welcome everyone. And the topic for today is conscious parenting. We didn't discuss, but does anyone want to jump in straight away? I mean, I suppose what I could say very briefly is just, it's a bit of a different topic to what we've covered in the way I see it, because, well, simply because of the word conscious. It's a sort of almost like a qualitative statement about the process. Does that make sense? I'm sorry if that's a bit abstract, but yeah, I suppose there's an issue with conscious because conscious is your potential issue when you say conscious this or conscious that, because of the way the word is sometimes used.
Yeah, good point. So it would be great to be very clear about what we mean with conscious, as well as parenting, even though that one seems less ambiguous. But
yes.
Yeah, conscious.
Okay, yeah, maybe
conscious
that's what I'm getting at.
and
We should define that first. Yeah. So, does someone want to define conscious? That would be a good start, I think.
I'll give it a try. Conscious as opposed to unconscious, because if you're unconscious, well, that's like when you're asleep, or say you got knocked out or you fainted. So what does that relate to? Well, it means you're not awake, you're not alert, you're not able to process your surroundings. If you're sleeping, you're dreaming, but that's not what we refer to as conscious. That's an unconscious state. So things can happen, I guess, in a consciousness aspect, even though you're not conscious. So I guess it's a little confusing. But when you're unconscious, you're not in a conscious state. So your conscious state is when you're in the real world and you're receiving sensory inputs from the objective reality, and then you're able to process those inputs and make sense of them and understand them, and then do something in relation to those inputs and interact with the reality. So in conscious parenting, you're conscious of what you're doing in your job as a parent, in your tasks and duties as a parent. Well, you're conscious. You're not just supposed to be reacting or being impulsive. You're supposed to take that you're supposed to take your that breath, or that gap between the input of, say, your child not acting optimally, and then the output that you're going to express in relation to that input. And you're going to put a little gap between the two, between the stimulus and the response, and you're going to take some time to process it and consciously choose how you're going to output and respond, as opposed to unconsciously, maybe emotionally and with anger or other less optimal emotions for a child, to help them learn why what they're doing is, usually a negative and not favorable or not desirable.
Yeah, I get that, Chris. So I would sort of kind of bring in conscious and then being unconscious, maybe reacting to our children from our subconscious that we're not always, well, aware of. It's very difficult to be consciously aware of the subconscious. So yeah, most parents, including myself, I'm a parent, even though my children are fully grown up. Because I knew we were talking about this, I've been going back this week and looking at the way I brought up children, and I said in the group chat I thought I was quite a conscious parent, but I'd never really looked into the definition before. I thought I was conscious, as in another way of looking at it, conscious about what's going on in the world, and kind of using that kind of awareness to sort of kind of consciously making the decision not to involve my children too much in the negative sort of kind of aspects of our society, like the education system. So I chose to homeschool them, for instance. I never really, as a parent, was aware of this type of conscious parenting that we're speaking about today. Even though when I look back, I can see that when my children were behaving in a certain way, I didn't always react. Sometimes I would take a breath and then go, right, how am I going to actually deal with this? And then go back and deal with the situation. But if I was honest with myself, I think I was, quite unconscious, really. And there was a lot of reaction from what I had learnt from my parents. So yeah, and I think that's how most people are functioning nowadays is with what they've been brought up, what they've learnt from their parents. And it's not always good.
You're talking about the monkey see, monkey do.
Yes.
Not in the
Yeah.
same sense, right? Yeah, it's had a really great chat, talking about, the unconscious, subconscious, and all these things, and how they could be running the show. And if there's not all these things reconciled from your early childhood, then there could be some motherless, fatherless behaviors going on, projecting out, and people aren't even aware of it sometimes, or at least able to identify the causal factors of why those things are happening. And I was lucky to like spot some of those things like early on, and I was like, whoa, got to check myself and do the proper inner work and reinvent myself and go through the alchemical process. And hey, while we're at it, I noticed that I was becoming like more consciously aware of things that really matter more than my own parents. And so I was like, shit, who would I look up to now? Like you get your mentors and that kind of stuff, and then you also learn how to. And I was mentioning this in the Europa Natural Law group discussion because early on in the week, it's good to chat up a little bit about the upcoming topic. And I was like, hey guys, if it's not apparent that I'm not a parent, then voila, here you go. But I don't roll around, acting all fatherlessly or whatever the fuck, right? I feel like I was raised right, regardless of, oh, my parents were statists and they voted for that, and they got duped by this or whatever the fuck, and watched the boob tube with the news, and yeah, all that shit, right? What I was gonna say was that, you know, there's still things that, you know, we can do, like, you know, be the father unto yourself, be the inner mother to yourself, and all these things. At least just being able to feel into and operate from those archetypes to whatever degree, right? We're talking about archetypes of consciousness, not, oh, I'm gonna be a mother now. No, it's not, right? What are the maternal values, right? And what are the paternal values? And then, you know, Hyros Gamos, mother lovers, right? So yeah, and that is the unity consciousness, or the mental gender, and having both sides balanced. And so these archetypes within you, you're able to find yourself and mature through that to whatever degree, right? I mean, not all of us were born into conscious parenting, and yeah, this can be such a broad term, you know, consciere, consciousness, to have you know, common sense, knowledge, to science together, knowledge together, you know, and are both mother and father on the same page? Are they undermining themselves, especially if they're separated? That kind of stuff. Is there competition? Are they doing what they can that's best for the child? Are they really trying to be a proper stellar role model for the kids to learn from and grow from, and see that, because they learn more from the parents' actions than the words, just because, you know, children don't have the same developed brain as we do. So, you know, there's the logical fallacy that, you know, some parents have thrown at me over the years, just because, you know, like, I might point out, like, hey, that, are you sure that's the right way to do it? Or, you know, this could be better. I have some advice. Like, what do you know? You're not a parent, and no. And like, guess what? You're not fucking that special just because you had a child, you know? Newsflash, there's been hundreds of billions of people that have had children before you. So what the fuck is new, you know? Are you actually acting up and being fully responsible for that life form as the steward? Not being the helicopter control-y thing. You're not acting like it's a fucking accessory in your life and all these things. Like, you're there for it with that heart-based intelligence, acting with that type of thing. But hey,
Yeah, I'd like to
I don't know at all, but yeah, Oscar,
to
follow up.
respond a bit to what
Yeah.
you've been saying, Derek. I don't know if I'm, because I think you're touching on a lot of the really important points. So just starting off with the monkey see, monkey do aspect of we're all children of some parental figures, and how they behaved and embodied the archetypes of paternity or maternity really do have a huge influence on our psychology. At least that's how I perceive it, and that we build, in a way, our personality a lot to how we learn from those teachers or those parental figures. So what you're speaking about, integrating those archetypes of mother and father, so that we don't project that out onto the world and become slaves of those projections, so that we can bring it home, I think is a really good point. And when we're speaking about unconscious parenting, I think a lot of parents recognize or are confronted with their own unconsciousness, their own shadow aspects when they become parents, which is, I think, extremely, like, it's a difficult situation, I would imagine. I'm not a parent myself, but I mean, I've got a nephew, and I feel as an uncle to him, I strive to be that paternal figure, and I recognize how much I can find it challenging to be that positive example, because I have my own unconscious behaviors and shadow sides, which I don't really want to pass on, if you will, right? But I think the latest insight I've had here, and now I'm going a bit off on a tangent, is that it's not really about trying to disrupt a negative pattern as much as it is to try to create a new one that's good. Because I don't like the old patterns that that have gone through generations. Those are there. I have that's my stuff, if you will, right? But I think I have the power to create new patterns as well as a step in that intergenerational journey that all of our families are on this here planet. And I think what you're touching on at the end, Derek, about the gravity of what it actually means to be a parent or that paternal figure or that teacher or that elder is something that really bothers me. It doesn't feel like for people a personal engagement or like something that they have to deal with unless they are a parent themselves. It doesn't feel like that there's a lot of personal responsibility going on when it comes to parenting. And for me, that's a lot what conscious parenting means. It's realizing how big a part of the solution, if not the main part of the solution, to the human slavery that is going on and to the destruction of environments and ecosystems, at least to the unnecessary scale that's going on. How much of the solution to all of that really does lie in parenting, in what values we teach our kids, what they see us do, how they see us behave. And I think we can see how difficult that task is, as I was explaining before, how I see it at least. But we can also recognize that that's where a lot of the work is, or where a lot of the solution is, and try to have our focus there. And I think it's not really about blaming fingers when we say that parenting needs to improve in quality. And I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong in refuting the statement that all parents are doing their best. I think I hear that a lot of the time. Every parent is doing their best. Every parent wants the best for their child, and I don't see anything wrong in refuting that statement. I think to really want the best for your child would be to actually be investing your time and energy into the enlightenment of humankind, so that through moral education we can be free. If you're not working towards that, if you're not putting effort into human freedom, then you don't really love your children, then you don't really want the best for your kids. And I think that's one of the things I really see missing in the equation, is that love of freedom, love of the next generation's freedoms. And yeah.
Oscar, that is beautiful. That is lovely. And you really triggered something in me there, Oscar, the difference between when you were saying, do you really care? Do you want freedom for your children's children? If you do, then yes, 100%, you do need to be conscious if you're a parent or if you're around children, because if you're going on generational, what I was talking about, reactions towards your children, then that is what you are teaching the next generation to be, reactionary, because they're looking to you for lessons, for guidance. You know, we are programmable. So if you are stepping back, like KRIS was saying, taking a few moments and taking a breath, if your child's acting in a way that's triggering whatever off in you, then when you are stepping back and taking a breather, ask yourself the question: what reaction, what thoughts, what feelings are coming up in you, and are they conducive and in proportionate to the situation that's occurring? If not, what are you going to do as an adult to change that situation? Then that's you becoming conscious of what you are thinking and feeling as an adult. Then your children are going to reciprocate and become conscious. Then there will be no more slavery. The more we carry on in that manner. That's what you're trying to say, isn't it, Oscar?
Yeah, we really are programmable, and we're also programmers. I think that's something we have to remember, and it's both super scary and super fun. And I think children are the same. It's not like only parents are the programmers. I mean, the story of the kid that points at the emperor and says the emperor has no clothes. How good are kids at pointing out things that we don't really see clearly, right? And they'll just ask these really straightforward questions, and you'll be like, "Whoa, I actually never thought about that." And so they're also challenging us to be more conscious.
Yeah, I'll just share real quick that, you know, what led on to the fire that was lit under my ass, you know, towards my awakening was the fact that, you know, I was happily married in love and looking to be a better man and also looking forward to being a parent. And this is back in like 2011, 12. It never happened, but voila. Nemo, I didn't want to skip you. I just wanted to throw that in there. But it's like, you know, it's that will force can be so powerful when you tap into it, wanting to do right and like, you know, and anticipating a new life that you're going to be taken care of for a while in your life, you know, and you've matured enough where it's not like you, the sad old same story of, you know, we got babies having fucking babies because, you know, they can't wait, you know, they can't, you know, protect themselves enough. And also let's talk about preconception, right? As far as, you know, the couple's intentions and what did they do a couple days prior to even, you know, making love or having sex. And those are two big differences, as we kind of mentioned in the last episode with sexuality, second to last. But, you know, and then there's, you know, fertility issues with all that stuff. And like on the man's side, like how pure is that sperm, right? What's the count, by the way? Is your just testosterone levels up? How's your dopamine deficiency? Magnesium? Or are these boys too worried about, you know, hooked up on swagnesium and all this shit, trying to act all fucking cool and whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? Anyways, not fall into a ranty situation. Nemo, please, after you, brother. You're muted, I think.
Yeah, no, I hadn't really said anything. Yeah, a lot of stuff to think about. I mean, I suppose part of it is this, it's kind of, there's something about this whole subject where it's like, it's kind of like you're talking about an ideal of like this ideal of conscious pet, like, and the ideal doesn't exist in this reality because we're in this deluded age, as we've like discussed before. So it's really degrees of consciousness, I'd say, you know, because who's done all their shadow work, who isn't triggered by stuff, you know, is that real, you know? I don't know. And so, and then there's just all of the like archetype, like broken archetypes of the reality that we're of society, you know. Homer Simpson, you know, springs to mind. You know, these kind of, but again and again, I mean, from fiction and from reality, you know, these like repeating loops of dysfunction and families just kind of sustain and then, yeah, because at the beginning we were talking about influence, but, you know, and like mimicry, but there's also the reverse, you know, you trigger, so the child bounces off the other way, you know, they hate the way you do it, so they do it totally different, you know, all of that can happen. So there's so much kind of like trauma and ignorance, self-ignorance, I would say, like bouncing around, you know, so people are acting out patterns unconsciously. And this is sort of called parenting, you know, because you had a kid. but really you're not really parenting, you're just acting out patterns and trauma, basically.
I think this calls for also defining parenting. We've gone a bit into the consciousness aspect, what we meant with that. Maybe now it's time for exploring a bit, what does it actually mean to parent?
Well, I suppose, because it could be, there's, you could say, I mean, you could have a kid, you could like abuse your body, the mother could abuse their body, and the father, you know, could like have the most awful hedonistic lifestyle, whatever. But the child is born, and then they could walk off and leave the child by the side of the road and their parents. That's one extreme of parenting, I guess. You couldn't deny that they're parents, right? And then on the other, and then on the other extreme, well, they're not parenting, I suppose you could argue, but on the other extreme, well, the other, what's the other end of that spectrum is like, you do everything to enlighten that being, right? To bring them into, to manifest their higher self. And that
maybe even
the goal of your life. That's what true parenting is like.
And maybe even without being, you know, biologically related to that individual. Maybe you're like the neighbor, you know, or maybe you're the teacher or the friend even.
Yeah.
Well, I think that
quick on etymology online, it just says, you know, a mother or a child or an elder, you know, someone that brings forth a child, birth type of thing. It was really basic, black and white, you know, just mother, father.
Well, there's a difference between raising and parenting. So, like, if a neighbor helps or a relative helps, they can help to raise. They can help to take care. So some parents gone, they can help to take care of them for 2-3 days. How are they raising them? Are they just taking care of them, like playing some games, feeding them, making sure they're okay? Or are they raising them in consciousness? And the parent, well, that's the one who's raising them for the majority of their life. So the neighbor can't be a parent, the aunt or uncle, unless the original parents die and then they raise the kids and then they become the parents. They're not the father or the mother, but they can become the parental figure. And in Adam Online, the parent is from the root meaning to bring forth, to give birth, to produce. So you have the biological parents who literally bring forth and birth and produce a new biological being. But there's that other aspect of what are you bringing forth and giving birth to and producing within them as a biological being. So you have the physical body construct, and then within it you have the mind and the consciousness, and then what are you producing from that? What is growing, what is flowering from that inner state? And in that sense, I guess someone else can help bring forth and give birth to and produce things within an individual, even though they didn't provide that physical capacity for the biological organism to come forth into existence, but they can bring forth things internally. So I don't think anyone in like the mainstream, the majority of people ever think of parenting in that respect of, well, they all think of it in the physical aspect of you're bringing forth, you're producing something into the world that didn't exist before, but you can also produce and bring forth things after they've come into a metaphysical qualities of their consciousness, what is coming in. And people don't think of parenting in that aspect of like producing a new life. Well, there's the after phase of once it comes into existence, what is being produced within them, and that's where the conscious parenting, as Yvonne was mentioning, what are you conscious of in the world? Are you conscious? What truths are you conscious of that you can have them learn about. So that part of being conscious of how you interact with your child also takes into consideration what are you conscious of in terms of what's going on in the world, and what truths can you instill them. Obviously, the moral truth is the most important truth that you can instill into anybody, and which is what makes parenting either as an influence in a parenting, I guess we could say parenting consciousness, or parenting the physical existence of the being, or both. And a true parent, a conscious parent, is supposed to do both, not just help take care of them, make sure they're fed and they have shelter and whatever, but also help to raise them in consciousness properly. And that's where we have a lack of, is the inner metaphysical parenting that's not being done to raise people into moral truth as a self-actualized being in morality. And that's why we have the world that we have. And that's what makes parenting the most important job there can be, is to raise another being, and you have that responsibility. And when, as most people aren't raised in consciousness, then they have they go into the world as you could say malformed. I guess we've all been malformed, and then we have to learn to reconstruct ourselves. And that's what the inner work, the alchemy, that first part of the great work. Before you do the outer work, you do have to do the inner work, and that is where you have to deconstruct and reconstruct yourself. So that's part of the negative and the positive pathway. You have to. I have an infographic on that alchemical divorce, where there's like a demon and you have to like destroy the demon within you. That's part of the hero's journey. That work we do within ourselves, face the things in ourselves, and then you get to rebuild yourself anew. And that's again the alchemy phoenix symbolism, where you get to burn away the impurities, and then you reconstruct yourself in a more purified form. And what was the thing on it was Oscar was saying, parents who think they do the best they can, but it's not true. They only do the best from where they are. So that's from their conditioned, unraised aspect of their own consciousness. They're doing the best from where they currently are, but that's not the best that they can do, because they can embark on that knowledge quest, on that spiritual journey, to be a phoenix and burn away that which does not serve them, and reconstitute themselves and reconstruct themselves in a better way. And by doing so, so that involves learning more, and then they can do things differently. So if they do that process, then they can do things better. And then at that point, they'll be doing the best they can do from that point, and then they can still learn things and do things better in the future. And then at that point, they'll be doing the best they can do from that position.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to, we spoke about that on the chat as well, that even if you haven't got children in your midst, that we've all been brought up probably with probably quite a high degree of unconscious parenting, and this is where we can be our own parents, because we're all kind of wounded in some way. And yeah, that is what shadow work is, in my opinion. It's facing those aspects within ourselves that are not conducive, that are yeah. So if anyone out there is going through stuff like interaction with other people that's not very healthy, or they're stuck in a mentality of kind of a victim. So like if you had sort of like a traumatic experience as a young kid, or you feel as though your mother or your father neglected you or cruel to you in some way, there is really no excuse. There is plenty of knowledge out there that you could seek and do that that conscious parenting on that wounded child within you. And that's you making a huge contribution to the, I don't know whether to call it the collective consciousness. I suppose it is in some way. You're making not only yourself a more balanced person, you are actually then contributing to the overall scheme of things in the whole collective consciousness if you take responsibility and do that shadow work.
Yeah.
There's no point. There's no point in going, oh, my mum was this or my mum was that. There's no excuse anymore. There's none.
Yeah, and that's what you learn, I think, if you go, anyone that goes on some kind of whatever you want to call it, like shadow work journey, whether it's like whether it's through having like psychoanalysis, whatever, some kind of process, this, that, or the other. There's a million different ways. But I think that's it starts off like one way, and it by nature, like that journey is becoming more whole. So whoever you are at the beginning, you're going to transform. You're going to become more whole through that process. And one way of thinking of that is there's a practice, isn't there, that's called self-parenting. Or there's probably a lot of different things that come under that kind of heading. Where you can literally go into a sort of some kind of meditation or hypnosis or whatever, and you see the child at a traumatic time, blah blah blah. You go through the feelings, and then you're there. You yourself, as your higher self, are there for that child. That's some form of that. But it's this kind of loop. So the pain can bring. It's like, because the parent isn't there to, or let's say the guide, the true true teacher, the person that is actually raising the child, wherever they're coming from, is not gonna say, oh yeah, that pain, like let's get past it, here, have a sweetie, if you stop crying, I'll give you an ice cream. The person that's truly raising that person is going to say, yeah, that pain is real, and that's part of life, and let's get through it, and I'm here with you, something like that, right? So it's like providing that for yourself. For most people, some form of that process is, I kind of think, essential for most people to as a muscle to flex, because most people didn't, in some form or other, didn't have that, a full spectrum present conscious parents, and so it's kind of some form of like neglect, like whether it's emotional, intellectual, physical, wherever it is, there's some kind of like bit that's absent, and we have to kind of find that for ourselves through some process or other, which is, as you say, it's called shadow work.
And to piggyback off that, because it is kind of like our own redemption arc, to redeem and retrieve our soul and all these things, and take more full control of our lives, and not let the shadow, unconscious, subconscious realms run the show all the time, right? A lot easier said than done, and it ain't no fucking cakewalk or whatever, right? But so in regards to having a redemption, or in being a parent, are parents allowing their children to make the typical blunders that we all did when we were growing up, young, kind of dumb, still figuring things out, still getting our bearings on this 3D reality and all these things. So our parents being encouraging to allowing their children to go out, explore, and discover and figure things out for themselves, even if they may get hurt or whatever. Are the parents able to just provide that safe space for them to heal and have a cry or whatever, and the parents letting them know that, hey, it's okay, like this is it's like, and then you bring up things like, oh, well, you fell down because, there's like laws of gravity and that kind of stuff, or, you go into the cause and effect, and like, see, that's the thing, there's like the hermetic principles and all these aspects and sciences of life that all apply, regardless of whether you're a parent, child, mother, father, single, man, woman, child, all these things. So it all depends on how you apply them to your current situation, right? And are you able to level up so you are being at your best, kind of like what KRIS was talking about? Because yeah, people are operating at whatever level of consciousness they're at, and unfortunately, on average, it's pretty fucking low. And on top of that, it's not like people are, quote unquote, we're all doing our best at whatever levels. Like, I call out a bunch of new age fluffy bullshit on that, because you see people acting complacent all the time. Can they do better right now? Yes, they can. They made the choice to be, lazy and focus on Netflix or whatever, when they could have been, studying some of that good, like, what's up at, evolveconsciousness.org, or just the One Great Work Network and things like that, right? So people need to look at themselves in the mirror and ask themselves, are they really fucking doing the best? Am I providing for my child the best I can on the emotional level, intellectual, spiritual, right? Life lesson stuff. And am I learning and leveling up with my child at the same time? Are you in it for the win-win, right? Things to consider. But yeah, I totally admit that there's things, for all the parents out there that I cannot understand, because I haven't experienced that, and that's totally fine. And I respect y'all, and I understand that it's a lot more complicated and easier said than done type of stuff. And I'm not one to, look on the outside, peeking in and like judging that kind of stuff, because I don't know people's situation, right? But your situation better than others. Are you able to optimize the best state of being and wellness for yourself and your child? It's kind of like we spoke about, what was it, yesterday, right? Like other previous episodes, it all goes back to, we need that self-care first and foremost, so it can ripple out for others, right? Service to others, that kind of stuff. So, and it's like, I do keep these things in mind, because I do have a nephew, and when I'm with him, I am very cognizant of, what I'm doing, and being, trying to be more self-aware of my actions, because he might be looking around and stuff, and like, I'm always hiding around if I'm going for a smoke or whatever, I don't want him to see me, so I'm just like, hit the cuts, whatever, right? So yeah. And there's different, I'll save it for the next round. I'll let someone go, but I'm gonna bring up some French factors into this equation. Mais oui, les amis, c'est la vie. Hey, Anna.
Ready to jump in?
Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Well,
Yes.
I guess I'm joining spontaneous here now. I heard you talking about
Welcome.
conscious parenting. Is it right?
Kan man høre det?
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Indeed. So yeah, I have a bit that another bit that I could say, which is kind of important, which is about the kind of external factors and how, well, I suppose really ultimately it's about kind of epi-eugenics, if you've come across that, and kind of eugenics generally, like humans ultimately on some level being kind of treated as as livestock, and these kind of, well, for one of kind of important aspect, I think, of this is kind of being reduced to like just about being able to afford a tiny little box to inhabit with your children, and that box possibly being on a street full of people you don't know, all of this kind of thing. The pressure on parents in like sort of modern Western civilization, let's say, and especially young parents, I mean, is just crazy, really crazy, unimaginably so, really. it's so unnatural and weird. And part of that is, I think, this part of what, when I say epi-eugenics, is the pressure to, well, I mean, it's the extreme of like antinatalism, but even without that, you have the pressure to delay having kids. And I think that is basically sort of dysgenic. I just think it's unnatural. It's clearly unnatural, really. If you look at sort of like where people's energy is without kind of preconditioning, people would naturally have kids a lot earlier than they're doing in, let's say, certainly in the West anyway. And when that happens, then the generations are closer together, so there's naturally more cohesion and more sharing of the raising of the children, because you don't have these huge gaps where your grandparents are, you know, dead already, because, you know, the generations come closer together. I think that's a kind of much more natural way of being, and obviously staying in proximity of those people, and basically accessing land in a completely different way to how we currently do. But that's a kind of whole other, leads into another subject. But yeah, those pressures are so intense, you know, this kind of isolation, and plus the kind of lack of preparation, and the lack of encouragement to even have kids in the first place. This is all kind of like weighing so heavily on the way that people come into having children. You know, it's like they're kind of in this wasteland of good information. You know, like how many people have ever even heard the concept of conscious parenting? You know, or at least, you know, given it any like thought for any amount of time. It's like parenting is just this kind of part of life that just kind of happens, and yeah, as we've said, it could be the central focus. You know, raising children, it would be the focus of you know, the central focus of a rational world. Certainly, like, obviously, what else is there? You know, we can't look back, we can't change the past, but we can make the future awesome. All we have to do is parent brilliantly. You know, that's it.
Oscar and Mary, did you guys want to try it again? Try to put the mic close, because your voice was kind of faint last time.
Microphone.
Check 1, 2. How you do?
I think what KRIS said about that, one of the most important pieces of knowledge to pass on is the knowledge of morality, is also something I really associate with conscious parenting, because it's through the teachers of morality that have put out content online, such as the people who are also on the One Great Work Network, that I've come to learn about conscious parenting. And so for me, it's a lot about making sure that your children learn these really important pieces of knowledge, come into knowledge of their own rights, and that you don't let the state stand in the way of your child's development when it comes to their sovereignty, to their freedom. And the main way that happens is through indoctrination. Sorry, I still have a bit of fruit in my mouth. But I think to really boil it down, I would say there's a lot of what are the the teachings that I pass on as a parent, but there's also what do I help my child defend themselves against, be that emotional manipulation, be that intellectual like lies, you know, like really good rhetoric, but it's just like a bunch of bullshit, and also physical self-defense, of course. So there's those ways as well of meeting your child, not only strengthening them and nourishing them, giving them emotional support and so on, but there's also the defense. And if you want to use those two principles, the principle of nonviolence and the principle of self-defense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to. Oscar, well said, man. And it's like everyone can understand morality, you know, what you can or cannot do that causes harm to other people, right? And you kind of teach that on to other kids, like, hey, wow, like what a revelation, right? But yeah, unfortunately, apparently, it's not all that common amongst too many people, because we see, you know, the law, universal laws being broken on a daily basis, right? Now over here in France, let me tell you, because, you know, I have so many kids, you know, I'm such a fucking parent, right? But you know, I have observed a good amount, and I've lived with you know, some friends that have kids and this and that, and you know, and there's books on this, and like, you know, a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but a good amount of Americans have kind of got keyed into this, including my sister, because she asked me like, "Oh, do you have that book? You know, how to raise your kids the French way or something like that?" Just because, yeah, for whatever reason, it seems like kids over here mature quite rapidly, you know, and you know, my lady over here, she has 3 kids, and she had them as late as like 45 years old. 44, 40, yeah, like real talk. But she knows what she's doing. She's a pro, and a straight up smooth mother lover, you know. But anyways, what are they feeding their kids? How are they talking to them? Are they being all baby and this and that? They're actually kind of talking to them kind of like a young adult, and feeding them the same food that they're eating at the table a lot of times, you know, as early as, you know, like 2 years old, whatever, whenever they, you know, are teething, or whenever they can really digest more complex foods and all these things. And yeah, as soon as they're 8 years old, you know, a nice glass of wine with dinner, right? No, just kidding. But but yeah, you know, it's not the best way. There's so many different ways we can do it, and people need to just, you know, create a home within a household and have a strong core family unit, and be a loving partner in front of your children, right? You know, show them boys out there what it means and how to treat a woman and all these things. Make these boys into gentlemen, right? And vice versa on the other side. I'm a guy, so I'm not going to go there, right? But yeah, you know what I mean, right? And so yeah, we can go past chivalry as well, right? So les chevaliers, putain, mais c'est les aristocrates de merde, quoi, un peu. Mais bon, ça c'est une autre histoire. Ivan, what's good?
I knew you was going to say that. I knew you was going to say that. There's just so many things going about in my head. I don't even know where to start, really. Give me a minute. If someone wants to jump in, because my head's going everywhere on this one. Give me a minute.
And French kids get all types of cheese too, you know.
I know what I was going to say, Derek. this is what you triggered in me, you know, because you said it twice now that you're not a parent, and then other people saying, "Oh, how can you say this? How can you say that? You don't know what it's like." I just think it's absolute bollocks, Derek. You know what's wrong and right. you know, you can see what's going on in the outside world. So to me, you're just as qualified as anybody else, and probably more so because you've probably got more time to observe what's really going on. And I'm sure it's clearly evident to you, because you know what cause and effect is. You know what the causal factors are in what's going on with the way children are being raised, and what the effects are. It's horrific out there with a lot of children. They're either turning into total delinquents, or suicidal, or they're probably not even here no more, or they're wrapped up and like filled to the brim with pharmaceuticals. So I'm sure it's clearly evident to you, Derek, the effects of bad parenting. So I think you're probably more qualified than 90% of the population of parents at the minute. Really?
Flattering. Thanks.
No, but serious. And it's yeah. So anyone out there that wants to point the fingers at Derek saying you can't say this, you can't say that because you're not a parent. It's
I thought you were going to say that he's been a kid.
no.
He's been a kid. Doesn't that qualify you to speak?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like what you said, Nemo. Yeah, there's enough babies having babies already. So hey, I guess
Yeah. It's so important, this subject. It's I've been listening to Michael Tsarian on Unslaved, and he's the stuff he's been talking about it for years. But like the effects of the mother in particular is really, really intriguing me at the minute. Anyone that wants to delve into how we are influenced by our parents, particularly the mother, because the child, before it's even birthed into this world, is got a direct effect with the mother. Yeah, check out Unslaved. I don't want to go on about it because it's going to take it onto different. It's a whole
I think
big subject, but
a whole lot of references that are worth mentioning. I also saw one of the commenters mentioned Stephen Molyneux. I don't know how to say his name. Stephen Molyneux. And he's writing that he coined the term peaceful parenting and brought it into the spotlight in the early 2010s. So in regards to checking out people's work, I just wanted to mention some people that are really worth checking out, I think. And some resources when it comes to books is the teacher from New York called John Taylor Gatto, who I think was a big part of starting the unschooling movement, which is about not using a curriculum and not it's like having a very different relationship with your students as a teacher. He's really interesting to look into. He's written books about the educational system or the school system, to be more precise. And then there's also a lovely woman called Indica Martin. She wrote a book called Give to Nature and Nature Will Give to You. And I took a screenshot of the book as well, but that book you can find at givetonaturebooks.com. And
I gave my nephew one too. Good stuff.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, it comes in French and Italian and Spanish as well as English. And when it comes to some really awesome presentations, there's I have to mention that guy, Will Keller, who you can find at the One Great Work Network and also on his own
websites. I think his website is willtelltruth.org or something.com. I might be wrong about that, but Will Keller has a lot of presentations on conscious parenting, and yeah, there's different people on the One Great Network as well who have also covered that topic. So you can check that out. There's a search button actually on that website where you can just search parenting or conscious parenting, and you'll see how many people have put out work on that. And now he's the same person that mentioned Stephen Molyneux is mentioning Rudolf Steiner. So that's also an interesting resource to check out when it comes to children and how to parent and raise.
I thought I also would like to try to contribute to this conversation, even though I came a little late. So I missed out on some part of it. But it's I also just asked Oscar, like, if conscious parenting is a term in itself, because I was not sure about that. I haven't heard anyone say it before. Oscar said it was going to be the topic of this week's conversation. But when I just now, while listening and just thinking about the term itself, I just thought to myself, like, I haven't heard about it, but I always thought myself, like, I really would like to be, when becoming a parent, like, I wish to be very conscious about how I'm going to parent future kids, because I have this feeling, or like just when I observe people around me, or that are getting kids, or how people do when they get kids, I feel like I see a lot of unconscious parenting. And if taking Denmark as an example, I think I heard, because we're from Denmark, but I think I heard that Denmark is probably one of the most institutionalized countries, which means like they even have like one town, there's a daycare where it's from 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock in the evening. So, and that's the extreme of it, but it's more just this, that it's like, okay, maybe there's this, there's this, ideal that, oh, you should get kids and you should get the house and you should get the car and blah, blah, blah. And then maybe a lot of people are like, okay, we go through these goals, we get the kids and we do that and that and that. And then you leave the kids in the school or in like a daycare, or like, oh, mama is working in the evening and dad is working in the morning. Let's leave the kid whole day there. It's just like, why did you get them if you're not going to be there for them, if you're not going to be the one teaching them? Like in these institutions also, you're leaving them to random grown-ups that you can't be sure is acting morally. And on the same time, you don't know them so well. And then that kid will not get the loving that it would actually need from a mom or like the parents, because like I feel like in psychology we do know how important the relationship between the mom and the baby is in the first few years. And when you already put your baby into daycare at 6 months or 7 months, or I don't know, it seems like very early to rip like that bond apart and already start to making some sort of insecure attachment to the child. And I've been thinking so much about this that it's like, I remember just one lady saying that I know who has 2 kids. She was like saying that the child was going from the, I don't know, daycare to kindergarten. And then she was saying like, I don't know why she's biting her nails. It might be because it's a bit of a big change. But in my head, I was like thinking she's biting her nails because she's feeling abandoned in a new environment yet again, like, or once again. And that for me seems like unconscious parenting. It's like, oh, I'm just doing like everyone else is doing around me. Everyone is working. Everyone is putting their kids into these institutions. I'm not going to ask any more questions about it. I'm just doing it too, even though my child is showing I'm not fine with this, giving signals like, I want mommy and daddy, this is not safe. They still do it. And then it's like, oh, because everyone else do it. Maybe it's just a phase we're going through.
Yeah.
It's like not something.
But do you have some also examples of what you would call like the qualities of a conscious parent? Like, have you seen some examples in your own experience, or what would you describe as then being okay, the opposite of that, or the
Well, I think like what I've just known from psychology, it seems like up till when you're 3 years, kind of the child really needs like this stability and the close relation to the mom. I would also say, I include the daddy, but every psychology thing that's written is saying mostly the mom. And then it's more this, that because the child will know that the mom is there, the child itself will start to develop this like independence where it try out things, but always can look to mommy and be like, okay, she's there. If I'm in danger, she's going to catch me in a second. Or she's going to, is it okay I'm walking over there? Okay, mommy is nodding. I can go over there. So there's this constant like dialogue where the child like in a safe environment can try out limits and then also start to, because the mom gives the what is called confidence to the child, or like trust in the child.
yeah.
You can do this. Then the child also gain this trust to oneself, develop this like, how do I say, like in life, if we get this part in the start, in life we should have like this inner voice when we go into trouble. Like, do we believe we can do it, or do we not believe we can do it? Is the whole world falling apart, or is it like we see like the light in the end of the tunnel? And I think it's maybe very fluffy said, but it's more just in the way that if we have got the trust from our mom and from this early part of childhood, we will much easier could meet challenges later in life and be okay about it in some way. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe this was a little range.
I think that's a great description. Thanks.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Well done.
KRIS,
Well
we haven't
done.
heard from you for a bit. Did you want to pitch in?
Who? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
KRIS.
No, I'm good. I'm going to be going to eat. Food's
Yeah.
ready, so I'm going to be popping off in about 2 minutes or something.
Okay. Cool.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for joining us. So we're past. It's already 7 past the hour. So just closing thoughts, really, I guess.
I have one thing that I really love. I don't know where it's from. It's this line. It's our actions echo in eternity.
Gladiator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess, everyone needs to ask themselves what kind of legacy are they leaving for, the future generations, even this current time-space continuum and all these things, right? People can talk up a big talk, that's real easy, but actually, your actions are going to speak louder than your words when it's all said and done. And yeah, it kind of just all goes back to doing the proper path work and keeping your heart as light as a feather, rippling that out. And yeah, if you have kids, great, be that light for them to that beacon of light that they can look to in their hours of darkness or whatever, right? Even if they're in their 20s or 30s, or it doesn't matter the age, right? So yeah, sometimes we take it back to it takes a village, right? So it's, we see different archetypes of mentors that we come across in our lives, yet we still have our immediate ancestry and lineage that is there, and that it's in our blood. How are we honoring that? How are we looking to level up that and making the best name for your last name, family name, as you can? And it harkens back to like the Lord of the Rings. They would address them like Owen, son of Glowin, and all these things, and they would know these people because their ancestors had greatness and stuff. So hold yourself to a great standard and all these things. And it's not about like, I want people to make me look, or I want people to look good on me or whatever. No, it's just making a proper positive mark on this planet for you and yours immediately, your immediate surroundings. And if you can help others, great, keep going with that, right? So yeah, that's all I got. And yeah, Jeffrey Phillips, he mentioned the Waldorf school. That's a great place, and I have some friends that sacrifice some decent money to, you know, pay for that type of schooling, and it helps out in heaps. So yeah, it's better than the public indoctrination systems, although there's convenience to that, and yeah, there's the freebies, but you kind of get what you pay for sometimes with these things. But yeah, that's in America. You know, we're in Europe, and c'est la vie, les amis. Merci beaucoup. Mais oui, voilà.
Okay, cool. We've got so KRIS is headed off. I wanted to just say a little something about toxicity, I guess. Like, you know, that's one way of looking at it, like the toxicity of the environment, and kind of really being honest with ourselves about that. And that's about on every level, you know, physical, emotional, intellectual. You know, we're in this kind of mad environment, and even just down to something I mentioned earlier, oh, shut up, here's an ice cream kind of thing. It's like it's this kind of cliche, but like sugar, I mean, what the hell, you know, the amount that kids are bribed with sugar, and what that leads to in terms of like brain, body, you know, how that's like the first sort of addiction of most people, I guess. Or, I mean, addiction, I suppose, it can be subtle, you know, but sugar's not subtle, you know. And it's like once you're kind of hooked into sugar, you know, kids kind of expect sugar every day, you know, and they get it every day, like a few times. It's like, oh, we'll just have to. I see this all the time, you know.
And then they get shouted at, don't they, Nemo, for being too hyper?
Yeah. And but you know, this thing of this kind of parenting where it's like parents being bullied by their kids, you know, of like, oh well, if I can't, it's like there's sort of like this kind of they're reduced into this bargaining of like, oh no, we can't have that, but maybe we'll get this though, you know, sort of thing. It's like you know, and I see like parents asking their kid whether they want this or that, and the kid's like 3 or something. I'm like, why are you like, you're engaging with this kid in the wrong way, you know? It's like but you learn this stuff. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but the toxicity thing I think is so important, to be honest about what's toxic, and then to you know, face up to that, you know. Like, I mean, you know, tap water toxic, let's start there, you know. So like, and then build a life from that sort of thing, you know. There's like so much of what is around, you know, the media that we're surrounded by is so toxic, and it's getting worse, you know. It's getting like off the charts, some of the stuff that's happening. It's like, oh my gosh. And kids are like, what was it the other day? Oh, okay, here's a little kind of bit of parenting. I looked at Twitter this week, you know, which terrible idea, but there was a tweet that someone had put, and it was about, oh, they taught their son how to email, and here's the email, and isn't it cute? And their son was seven years old. And then I looked at all the comments. I thought, I wonder if someone is going to say, why is your 7-year-old on a computer? Is anyone going to say that? But no, they were all just like, oh, how cute, blah, 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 you know. Oh, what a great parent you are. Yeah. And I was just kind of like, yeah. I mean, I
think I could argue for why
I shouldn't really make. Maybe you can email when you're 7, but regardless, it's like, there's no doubt that screens are being used as babysitters, and that's just inexcusable, really. Anyway,
and a resource for that is this book by Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation. I just wanted to bring that up as another resource that people can check out in regards to the social media and the smartphones and and the porn and how that has influenced the kids of today, including our generation.
Our generation.
Yeah.
Because we grew up with getting the smartphones early and then the computers. And I remember, or like, you know, that you need to have the computer in school also. And now I go also to school with computers, and I see so many not being in school. They're just playing games or different things. But maybe I kind of thought about just to maybe add something. Anyway, this with having the access with the smartphones, I remember when I was younger, suddenly there was like this app that was made that was called Ask.fm or something like that, and it was about where you could ask anonymous questions to anyone that you went to, like, or I don't know, you made a profile. It was kind of like Facebook or something, or Instagram, where you have a profile, but then the main thing was you got anonymous questions from someone else, and you wouldn't know who it was. And it kind of, I don't know, made this feeling like Big Brother is watching, like you got judged suddenly. I remember someone was commenting my eyebrows, why they looked like that, or why I took all the ways to the clothes. I felt all the time judged, and this to know like the only ones who knew me at that time was people in my class, which was kind of weird. And maybe I was only in 7th grade, so maybe I've been 13, kind of vulnerable at that time, you know, getting into puberty and not knowing what is going on, and then having this weird, I don't know, platform where it also seems like parents or grown-ups have really late gotten into the game of what the smartphone and the computer technology actually is, and get to know what apps are on there, or how easy accessible porn actually is, or other things. I think this app is just a memory of where I kind of felt traumatized actually with this technology, and not knowing, like, no teachers took it up either. It just continued. I think after I got some comment that kind of felt hurting me personally, I chose to delete the app, because I was like, I don't want to be in this game where we all comment each other and you can't say it up to my face anymore. It's just something that you can do on this, and you can hide your face. Yeah, that was maybe one.
Generation Z, the Zoomers. Let's go. Oh, baby.
Okay, hey, any other thoughts, Yvonne or Derek? Close up.
To conclude, I would say I can only go on personal thing again. You know, we're talking about unconscious and being conscious. There's not only like our hang-ups that we've inherited from our parents, there is like a collective hang-up as well. I really experienced that as a parent, because I chose obviously to take my children out of school. The abuse I got for that was quite extreme. I chose like not to give my children any of their medical injections. Fucking the abuse I got for that. I chose not to give my children like smartphones, because they started to come in when my kids were sort of like 5 or 6, and yeah, it was almost like I was viewed as an abusive parent. And that's the God's honest truth. So my advice to parents out there, if you've got feelings in you or thoughts in you that you know things are not quite right in what you're experiencing in the external world, go on your intuition, and no matter what, stick by your guns and do what's right for your children's children, regardless of what everyone else is thinking and projecting onto you, because the outcome is that you will have successful children. You will have successful children. Yeah.
And you do, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. There's something, and also one more thing, regards like carrying on, taking responsibility. Even though my children are older, my eldest one's about 27. I can't remember his exact age. I don't really take much notice, but I think he is about 27. Anyway, I still pulled him up last year sometime. I recognised a behaviour in him towards his girlfriend. So I sat back and still did a bit of conscious parenting, and I just thought, where the fuck has he got that from? And then I realised that he had actually got that from me, from me as a female at that time when he was a certain age, the way I was sort of interacting with the male. And I thought, oh, fuck, I'm going to have to take responsibility for that. So I did. Even though he's still an adult, I still feel like a sense of responsibility that I have to own up to some of my mishaps. So I did. I spoke to him about it, and I just said, look, that's come from that. It has come from that. So I'm just asking you to just step back and acknowledge that I can see that I wasn't in the best place at that point, and this is how I choose to carry on now, even though you've not seen me as a woman or a mother, because you ain't been around me for the last, well, we are interacting, but he lives in his own house and I live somewhere else. I don't choose to think or feel that way anymore. So maybe take the time, son, and think about the way you're interacting with your lovely woman. And he did. He took the time and he came back and he went, thanks, Mum. Yeah, I get it. And thanks for... So it's never too late to sort of change those patterns.
Oh, said. I don't even want to say anything after that. And that was lovely. Thank you, Yvonne. Yeah. But I will just say real quick, in emphasizing Jeffrey, he had a comment earlier of just how, yeah, parents can kind of overreact a little bit of, you know, like, hey, we're stressed out, you know, the daily grind, whatever, work, you know, limited time, whatever, right? You know, kids take inventory, you know, energetically on that level even, or just, you know, in the unconscious, subconscious, you know, recessions of the mind, you know, especially if they don't want to remember such, you know, harsh interactions when they were yelled at for, you know, oh, I just wanted the candy bar and my mom yelled at me because she's stressed out. She's not, you know, financially equipped to, you know, or whatever, right? You could just, and that ain't got to be candy or, you know, sweets or the sugar stuff. And yeah, there's other options besides sugar, and making homemade sweets is a cool, conscious option as well. So that's all I'm going to throw out there. Bon appetit, y'all. Thank you for listening out there.
Could I just say this, because it's making me laugh? Do you know what the treat was for my eldest son? And I got absolutely ripped to shreds for this as well. He used to actually get excited. Oat cakes were his treat.
Yeah. Nice. Love an oat cake. This is what I'm. Can you see that? That's a nutritious, sugar-free treat.
With dates.
Dates, yeah, dates,
nice,
seeds, yeah. And yeah, people love them. Right, so that's it for today. Thanks, everyone. And it looks like last time I looked at the chat, it was the favorite topic seemed to be moving on to the Hermetic principles, as far as I could tell. So maybe. I thought we may be diving into that, which is going to be a 7-week epic journey that, of course, you're welcome to take with us. So has anyone seen that recently?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think that's great. Let's do a.
Yeah, we've been saying it for a while.
The principle of mind, of mentalism next week. That would be super cool.
Yeah. I think it is a really Hermetic principles. Mentalism is a really good one to after parent. This conscience parent. It's perfect, really.
So mentalism. I'll just quickly say there's the mentalism, which is to do with like stage show or seances, that kind of thing, where people cold read people. That's good. There's a sort of mentalism as entertainment kind of thing. There's that. That's not what's meant by the principle. The principle of mentalism is quite distinct from that, and it's related to the
KYBALION.
reality that all is mind. That's basically what it means. All is mind. So we're going to be looking at that starting now on Telegram, on the chat. Let's get into it and have some good discussions in the week on the topics as we go. So we've got seven weeks. We're diving into the Hermetic principles. So I hope you'll join us. And so, yeah, next week, all is mind. And the KYBALION, there is a link, by the way, in the description for a download of the KYBALION, which is a very short, pretty brief introduction and breakdown of the Hermetic principles. So that would be a good thing to study along with us as we go through it. And I'm sure I'll be rereading it as well. So that's it. So thanks, everyone. And I think that's it for now.
You know what? Actually, this Thursday, let's meet up in the group chat and do a reading.
Yeah.
Of the chapter, which is all about the principle of mind. So at 7:30 Central European time, we'll meet in the Telegram chat and read a bit of about it, so we have some context as well. So join us there. That will be an informal reading. We won't record it. And if you have anything that you want to share there, it's not going to be live.
And yeah, in the meantime, you can check out my channel, Awaken Your Mind, right?
Woo!
I've been very mindful of these Hermetic principles for a long time. So anyways, musically oriented things of that nature. That's all. And conscious parenting on Dissolving the Divide, there is a playlist, if people want to, learn more. We've had some really, really, really great guests, including Dana Martin, who's also on the One Great Network, not relative to Indica Martin, who wrote the book, but still, high-profile, radical parent. That's all. So,
cool.
Thank you, Nemo. Everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you on Thursday or next week. All right. Cheers.
I see what you're doing there, Nemo. You cheat.
C'est l'amour.
Okay. See you next week.